Hello everybody and welcome back to Punting Pioneer. Have you wondered what creature type Mutavault is lately? Well, this week it's a knight. It's the land that is so ubiquitous in Pioneer, just like it used to be in Modern, because it is amazing in these tribal decks. This week our Mutavaults will be knights, because this is Tribal Knights here on Punting Pioneer. Welcome in. Let's look at this deck. It is a tribal knight build, but we're going to start with a non-knight here with Thraben Inspector. This one is a soldier, but it is pretty amazing. You get to investigate as soon as it comes into play, so you're going to get value off of this card almost no matter what eventually. It's also just a nice curve filler at 1-2. Fatal Push removal, you're always going to have it. Same with Thoughtseize. Those are probably the 8 most commonly played cards in any one color in the format. They're just so good. So Knight of the Ebon Legion here. Now, this was a recent addition, M20, but not only does it work in vampire decks, it works in knight decks as well. So this card just does it all, has a lot of great ability. So moving up the curve here, we play Scrounger because it's just a good card. And we play Knight of the White Orchid, which is one of the most interesting cards in terms of design in Magic in a long time, because it works better when you're on the draw. If you're on the draw, you get to go ramp, get an extra land, and suddenly you're on the play. And it's one of the few cards that do that. That said, even if you're on the play, it's still a 2/2 first striker for 2 that's going to get all your knight bonuses. So it's got a lot going for it. So moving up the curve now, Thalia, Heretic, Cathar. Another creature that is not a knight, but a very good one. First strike, make your opponent's stuff come into play. Tapped. Gideon of the Trials. This way you do not get, you don't lose to Thassa's Oracle. This is just also a generically good card, right? It can attack. It's got emblems. It can stall the board. It does a lot of things. So History of Benalia. I love this card. This card is good when you're behind, ahead, trying to get out of mana screw, or when you're mana flooded. It just does so much for you. It is a staple. Anguished Unmaking. I recently learned about this story. I know what's happening in this art now. It's no longer just random angry Soren being mad. And this card is great. I love it. You have unconditional removal, pretty much. You do lose 3 life for it, but it's worth it. Getting Ally of Zendikar, terrorized Standard back when it was legal, and now it is here in Pioneer. By the way, it makes knights. It works perfectly in the deck. Archangel Avacyn, flash in, save the team, transform when you need to, and because it's a knight deck, we had to have it. Circle of Loyalty. Now, the sideboard is filled with some of my favorite cards as well. Look, there are some of this. It's a mix of the sideboards that were in the decks that were doing well online, and some fun ones that I included. Because hey, if you have the opportunity to play Elenda the Duskgrows, why wouldn't you? It's a knight, by the way, with lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, he gets counters, and then you get a bunch of creatures later. So it's actually both good against board wipes and against aggressive decks. So we're going to give it a shot. Kalidas is a staple. This messes up your opponent's death triggers, messes up their graveyard in general. It's a great card. All right, here we go. Kunoros, Grafdigger's Cage, never looked so good, and this shuts off a lot of commonly played creatures. I mean, including, for what it's worth, not our Scrapheap Scrounger. Our Scrapheap Scrounger returns itself to the battlefield. It's not cast, so that does work the way we want it to. Damping Sphere, of course, for Lotus Fields. Agonizing Remorse for Dimir Inverter. You can actually, it's pretty neat being able to hit a card in their graveyard or in their hand. Rest in Peace whenever you need it. Knight of Grace. Now, this is an addition of my own, but I think it might check out. If you're playing against Mono Black, they have obviously a lot of black removal, but also a lot of their creatures are X2s or X3s. And if they have a black creature in play, it means your Knight of Grace is a 3/2. It beats their Gifted Aetherborns in combat, and almost nothing else in the format will not at least trade with a Gifted Aetherborn. So Knight of Grace, I love it. Along the same lines, Fiendslayer Paladin. I think this one's probably not likely to make the cut in a competitive version of the deck, but it's pretty fun. Let's see if we get to play against Mono Red. Acclaimed Contender, Throne of Eldraine one. This is pretty cool. Now, we're not really doing much with equipments or auras here, but it is kind of a value card that you could play if you wanted to. So it's over here in case we find a matchup where it would just be really neat to resolve that card. So there you go, everybody. Punting Pioneer this week. I'm Corbin Hosler. This is Black-White Knights. Let's get to the games. All right, everybody. Here we go with White-Black Knights in Pioneer. Kicking it off here. I think this hand's a keep. We're on the play, which is great. Knight of the White Orchid. Obviously better on the draw, but look, our opponent mulligan. We get to clear the way with Thoughtseize here. This is interesting. What I was going to say is we clear the way with Thoughtseize. We hold the ground with the Knight, and then we eventually deploy this Gideon to try to take over the game, and I think we can do that against this hand. I'm just going to Thoughtseize their Thoughtseizes. Next turn, I get to run out the Knight. I won't have any value from it, but I also have the Mutavault after that, and if we can just, wow, now it looks really good, right? Now we just get to go straight 2-drop here. No, again, we don't get the extra ability, but it's a 2/2 first strike in Pioneer. Our opponent is playing things like Tireless Tracker. At least starts off with 2 toughness, so it actually looks like we might reasonably develop this into a bit of a powerhouse hand if our opponent is just going to go get a basic this turn. If this doesn't lead to a Thoughtseize, we need to go History into Gideon. And even if it does end in a Thoughtseize and they take our Gideon, we still have a History there. So along with the Mutavault. So this hand really working out pretty okay. I mean, of course, any hand that has History of Benalia in it is going to look pretty good. This card is nuts. I mean, we know how silly this card was from its time in Standard, but History of Benalia is a really just strong card, just with the abilities it has. It's so much wrapped up in such a little cost. So we're just going to slam it here. Start the value train rolling. Get on in there. Yeah, I mean, the card is just, basically think about it in terms like this. If you're ahead or if you're behind. If you're at parity. If you're at parity, obviously it's great because it starts pulling you ahead on board with more creatures. If you're ahead, it overloads and, overloads the board, and then you have the final ability. And if you're behind, you get blockers. And it gives you a blocker the turn after it comes into play for no mana investment. So it's never bad, which really goes a long way to making cards good, if that makes sense. So speaking of good cards, just go ahead and slam this here Gideon. Now, it is tempting to... It's actually very tempting to do a bunch of things here. I could cash it in for the emblem, which would certainly be pretty powerful, but I think just making a Knight here is going to be way better. We'll get in for 4 here. So that puts our opponent down to 14. But look, we're going to untap. We have 8 power in play. They're all going to get +2, +1. That's another 8 power, and that's 16. So that is lethal. That we will be presenting next turn. Look, my opponent will have this Jace they can block with, but we turn Gideon into a 5/5 as well. We have 2 potentially lethal creatures swinging at our opponent, so they're going to need the block plus something else here. So, and of course this Mutavault. So yeah, this is a pretty great position for us. I'm not really sure what they could have to get out of this. They're not playing Supreme Verdicts. Playing a Tireless Tracker here does nothing. They're going to wrap it up. Okay, so against Sultai here, we've got our weird little sideboard. We'll give it a shot. Okay, so I think I like the idea of a Knight of Grace. My opponent's certainly going to be playing Fatal Pushes. Creatures and non-basics. That seems like it's probably fairly relevant. This is actually probably at its best in this matchup, or very close to its best. This is hard. Okay, so we do know that we're specifically on the draw. I think we can probably cut the Blacklance Paragon. On the draw, I'm going to cut a Thalia. Question is, do we want something like an Elenda? Could be reasonable. We could go for the Kalitas here. This one seems pretty relevant if our opponent has Urros. So I think we want both of the Kalitases in. I'll board out a Gideon. So this leaves us needing to get 2 more out because we definitely want the Kunoros. Now the other option, of course, is to just go for the rest in peace. But I don't think I like that plan. I'm gonna get rid of this. That gets us back to 61. We cut a Knight of Grace. We give something like this a shot. I mean, this card is also not bad, but its power is not as much, and lifelink isn't as relevant. I don't think we want to go full on Rest in Peace, because the thing is, Rest in Peace doesn't interact with the board. It interacts with the graveyard, and if your opponent's ahead on board, it doesn't do anything. With some of these creatures we're bringing in ways to interact with the graveyard while also playing to the board. So I think I like this. You kind of want an Acclaimed Contender in here. It's a similar, it's kind of a similar version of Gideon. I think probably not. I don't know if I'm ever going to board those in, but hey, it's a neat card, so I wanted to at least give it a shot. This hand is going to be quite painful, but I think I'm in for this. We've got our Knight of Grace, we got our Fatal Push, and a Thoughtseize as well, so we've got all of our colors. So is it It's probably going to be better just to shock this one in on turn 1 and just accept that we're going down to 16 rather than paying to this and then still wanting this mana later. Because we still want to play this on turn 2. So, yeah, just going to go ahead and shock this one into second Thoughtseize here. So if our opponent can't get out ahead on board, which, we should be able to stop them from doing with this Thoughtseize, we're going to be in a great position here. I don't think I actually care much about the Murderous Rider. Or the Assassin's Trophy at this point, frankly. That said, yeah, I'm just going to take the Traverse. We have another Thoughtseize lined up next turn if we really want it. Take the Traverse out of their hand. That becomes a threat later, or if they were planning on using it fairly here, they can't. So now we probably just throw down a Knight of Grace. Gosh, does that lead my opponent to just play a 2-3 murder? This lines up so well. It has hexproof from black, so it can't be hit by Swift End. And then I'll have a 3-2 first striker to win combat after. So that said, I mean, Scrounger is Scrounger. You know what? I'm going to go for it. This is actually the safer play here. It may or may not attack for 3, but it has much higher value, especially considering next turn we may want to end up playing this Thoughtseize or Fatal Push. And we want to have this thing in play for as long as possible, I think. That was a nice draw for our opponent right there. That's for sure. That was a nice draw for us in return. Off the top, Anguished Unmaking. Now, we are down to, 11 life now? But that was huge for us. Our opponent, I think, probably very much wanted to resolve that one. They have, that we know of, an Assassin's Trophy, a Murderous Rider in hand. So we'll hopefully untap and Thoughtseize one of them and Fatal Push that one. So okay, get a Mutavault here. Also a nice draw. I could just play double Scrounger. My opponent's not exactly close to flipping Jace. That might just be better. Because what are they going to spend either of those spells on it? Big deal. I'm in. Double Scrounger. Then next turn, we're still going to be able to Thoughtseize one of these cards out of our opponent's hand. So we'll be able to Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, and activate Mutavault. So we should be swinging for a ton next turn while killing the Jace. So yeah, Fatal Push on this. Not a big deal. We tax their removal. This gets to come back at some point in the future. It's another creature card. So if they ever get rid of the Knight, that'll do it. And you don't want to do it, but you can always sacrifice one Scrapheap to the other if it's the last points of damage. So our opponent, though, on Murderous Rider Assassin's Trophy, not looking great for them. History of Benalia is a nice draw for us, too. So I actually think this is what I'm going to do. I want to play this History of Benalia. So it's probably History. The problem is my opponent... If I ever want to cast this Thoughtseize, I have to do it right now. And I do kind of think I want to cast it, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll Thoughtseize. Believe we know the two cards here, unless I messed something up. They shouldn't even do it in response, unless they really value the Murderous Rider, which, frankly, on this board state, they probably should. So we're going to end up getting the Assassin's Trophy here. Or not, I guess. They do have a Jace activation to try to find some interaction. But this will put us down to 9, and then the Caves is going to take us down to 8. But I think it's worth it to cast the History of Benalia. So, all right, looks like our opponent going for the Swift in here on the Scrounger. And our Thoughtseize hits their Thoughtseize. Okay. That's not bad, actually, considering we do still have a relevant spell in hand. Unfortunately, it does look like it's one I'm going to need to cast now. There's enough in their graveyard that I can't mess around. So... going to be a turn slower on the History of Benalia, but we still get in for 4 this turn. Our opponent's out of cards in hand. They're at 10. Next turn, they play a Murderous Rider, so we still get to get in there for 3. And this was really the only turn we're going to be able to attack with this anyways. So I think this line is reasonable. It's not like these 2/2s can attack it into the 2/3 anyways. We're just waiting for the trigger. But yeah, this lines up great here. I mean, yeah, your opponent... they're getting 2 of it back, so you're only kind of barely winning the race, but the point is you get to choose. You can work just as well on defense as it does on offense. So I guess we'll play around Spell Pierce here. Not positive that's necessary, but we'll do it for good form. If I could only tap my mana right. Alright, run out the History of Benalia. This should do it, given just how low our opponent is. Now, if they attack with the Murderous Rider, I can actually fire up the Mutavault, just go for a double block. And that does not work out very well for them. And yeah, they're not even going to give that a try. So here we go. We hit a Scrounger. Oh, I might... Well... Alright, low-key, I might have missed lethal. I probably could have brought back a Scrounger, and maybe... Would that have made the difference? Let's say they block, they go to 9, then they take 5, 7. No, it actually wouldn't have been lethal, so... Not even a punt. Now, I do have the option of returning a Scrounger here, which I'll certainly do if it looks like we're going to get a move to our turn. But our opponent's going to need something pretty good off the top here. I mean, I guess something like a Kalitas... I won't even do it. We got there. Black-White Knights taking it down in the first match. That was awesome. Hey, everybody. Here we go with some more. I've kept some sketchy hands before. On the draw, I don't think we can keep this. On the play, you might talk me into it, but not on the draw. I will keep this one. I'll put this Circle of Loyalty we're not going to cast on the bottom. This hand looks much better. We got double 1-drop into 2-drop, and look, we have Flood. If we draw cheap cards, we can play them, and if we just draw lands, we actually have some Flood for protection here with the Avacyn, but our opponent is playing a bit of a brew as well. I believe it was Ken Yukihiro who did well at the Players Tour in Japan with this Black-White Auras deck that came out of nowhere. It's just a Ken deck, basically. It's crazy how good that guy is. And look, I know not all of you follow the pro scene, and it can be hard to get into and so on, but there are some really cool personalities and players, and Ken is both. He shows up to tournaments, he plays whatever the heck he wants to, and then he does well. You know, we do a metagame breakdown, and it's we're 25% this, 30% this, 45%, and 1% Ken's deck. You know, that's how it goes. So I assume anyways that's what my opponent is playing. We'll see here. I can't imagine many other places for Hateful Eidolon, but there you go. With a Ethereal Armor, it's a 3/4 first striking lifelink, so the boggles are out. We'll have to take it. Alright, I know I just talked up the deck. Now I'm just probably going to get very frustrated losing to it. Let's see here. Well, I guess if I'm not going to be blocking anytime soon, I may as well figure out how to keep attacking. So, look, the thing is, if we hit a third land, at least for now, we could give this 5 toughness and Death Touch. So, for the moment, until this gets uglier, we're okay. But this has to be one of my opponent's better draws here. I mean, obviously outside of us having a Fatal Push, but this is insane. Look at this. It's turn 3. They're coming in with a 10-10 flyer, huh? All right, you got this one. Good game. That was sick. All right, what the heck do we want against this deck? Knight of Grace has Hexproof from black, not protection from black, it turns out. We definitely want the Agonizing Remorse. Oof. Guess the Kalitas, it allows us... I mean, the thing about Kalitas is it allows us to chump block and sacrifice, so they wouldn't gain life, assuming they don't have trample. So this works out. Honestly, Gideon could be the single Gideon, if we can find it, would be very good here as well. Thalia seems not super relevant, actually. They have really inexpensive spells. Their creatures are going to be in play before Thalia. I think we can safely cut that one. I like being able to gain life with this, and of course, Death Touch could be pretty key as well. This makes blockers... Tough call here. Well, cutting Gideon just doesn't make a lot of sense, so I want any of the rest of this. No, I don't think so. I believe that the deck plays some black stuff. I mean, First Strike isn't bad. Alright, what if my deck started to look something like this? We're going to be on the play here. Cut the Knights. Oh, the White Orchids. Okay, I'm in for this. I think these cards all kind of work out the way I want them to. And we'll see if we get to play this game a little bit better. And I think I have to keep this. Look, we have one of the best cards in the matchup and are one of here with this Gideon of the Trials. Whether we try a Swamp, just drawing another Plains might win the game with Gideon. So I think that this hand is a pretty defensible keep. Even though, yeah, we don't have one of our colors and we're on 7, but I think these cards all mostly line up the way I want them to, with the exception of the Scrapheap Scrounger, obviously. But the ability to have some bodies to block this, but also just to Gideon it is huge. So, look, every hand you ever keep in Magic will need something to go right for it, and you just have to play the odds. And even if they're in your favor, they don't always work out. And we didn't find our swamp; we found another black card. So we'll see what happens next turn, and we'll see how bad it is too. I mean, the thing is with Gideon, it doesn't matter as long as we're not dead. It doesn't matter how scary this thing is. So my opponent's going in pretty hard on it. It is turn 2, and they're attacking with a 7/7 first strike lifelinker. But this is exactly what we want with our Gideon. If we can just rip a land right here. We did it. Not only is it a land, it is a 2-color land. That is the dream. I will prevent all damage that this Hateful Eidolon will deal. That's how you do it, folks. Look, it all looks really good when it works out like that, right? We will get to pass the turn back here. And now we say to our opponent, do you have another creature to try to play with? I'm sure there's more enchantments in your hand. All right, there's an Alseid. So this is actually a really interesting one because my opponent can sacrifice this to give this protection from the Gideon and actually blank the combat. So that was a nice answer from our opponent here. They can also, as you can see, just put stuff on it. So, yuck. I think we just have to go for this. All right, so that's very good for us. That basically that our opponent allowed that to resolve. So what I think I'm going to do is go for a Thoughtseizes here. Because our opponent allowed that to resolve, we don't have to worry about just being dead. So we at least get a turn to try to interact with something else. In this case, their hand. The problem is that, well, I guess the second Griffspoon is we have to take all the glitters here. We're down to 9. I can play a second Scrounger that can't really do anything. I guess we get a swing. Oh, double. Well, that doesn't even. It just doesn't even do anything. My opponent still gets a block. All right. In that case, I think I'm just gonna play the Thraben Inspector. I mean, look, this is certainly not good for us, but as long as our opponent is trying to poke down our Gideon with their Alseid, and the fact that this Griffspoon only gets it to a 3. Well, they draw an Ephemia, huh? Okay. This is getting a little bit out of hand for us. Turns out our opponent's deck just lines up very well against us. Lots of evasion. I mean, look, obviously this changes if we find something like a Fatal Push, but Gideon was one of our best cards, and our opponent has very successfully, as you can see here, just gone wide. Now there's a zombie in the mix too. So, yeah, that's they can go big, tall, as you in Magic jargon. Can also go pretty wide with stuff like Ephemia here. We did not hit our land, so. All right, let's make the only play we can make here, which is to plus Gideon onto the Hateful Eidolon. And then, I guess after this, it's just play History of Benalia. Not a great spot to be in, that's for sure. I guess our best draw here is going to be Fatal Push, but look, we need life too, so this is... yeah, this is going to be an uphill battle. This clue doesn't do us any good for a while either, so we get to trade with the zombie this turn with the Knight token. Take 4, which is enough to kill Gideon. Another Griffspoon. Okay. And my opponent has a mana to activate these. I think we're just dead. It's Fatal Push or bust right now, but look, even Fatal Push won't stop them from protecting this with the Alseid, so I think that we're just dead. Both of these fly. My creatures do not. Another zombie. And that'll do it. All right. Well, good games. On to the next one. All right. Time for more Black-white knights here, and this hand is something, is it not? I had to take a second to take this one in, but look at this. We're on the play. We have our choice of one-drops. I think I'm happy to just play the Thraben Inspector. One, it doesn't give away quite as much, but I don't. This isn't necessarily better for a while, especially. Well, I say that. It turns out that next turn, I might have been better off playing it because I mean this obviously helps, but I could have maximized my black mana and had a Fatal Push up here. Not that I think I would have played it necessarily. I'll go ahead and attack here. I'll bluff something. I mean, I think this still works out. We just get to play our Knight of the White Orchid. Who knows? Maybe we're in the mirror over there. Oh, look at my opponent thinking this one through. All right. Bluff called. Fair enough. I accept. All right. So next turn, we still get to go Thoughtseize plus either Fatal Push or Knight of the Ebon Legion, which is perfect because next turn is a turn, in theory, we could deal 3 damage if we were to, decide to Fatal Push away the Thraben Inspector here. So we'll see what our opponent does. But, very reasonable. Their plan could just be to crack their own clue. Well, the trigger's in the end step. All right, so start things off with the Thoughtseize. This will give us perfect knowledge of whether we want to fire off the Fatal Push here. I really don't think I will, but wow. Okay. All right, let's work through this one here. Arcanist Owl. When it's a battlefield, look at the top 4 and get an artifact or enchantment put into your hand. This is mono white devotion we're playing against. They have Nykthos. They have a Knight of their own, which will be very good. They have a Gideon's Intervention, huh? Well, I have an answer to this with my Fatal Push. I have no answers to this, admittedly. Gideon's Intervention, though. I mean, this is a 3/3. It's a little hard for us to swing through, but it's also worth noting if our opponent doesn't have Devotion, they can't even cast these, at least for now, because they don't have 4 white symbols because of the Nykthos. They'll probably get there to crack their clue, but I think that I'm going to take the Arc. Gosh, the problem is that they cast the first one. The second one almost doesn't matter. But I think that's just what I have to take here. All right, so we'll get in with the team. Probably not going to be able to trigger this, unfortunately. This game's going to be close. We'll see what my opponent's hits here. I mean, their hand is reasonably good. And we have just a very, very slow start going here. I mean, it does get better for us next turn. I assume our opponent just plays the Knight. And the thing is, playing the Knight actually gives him the white mana for the Owl here. So it was definitely correct to take this one, because one of them's coming down no matter what. There's not much we can do about that. We may as well just try to stem the bleeding a little bit and prevent the second one from hitting. They find each other too, don't they? Card's good. All right, here comes the Knight. It actually puts the land into play untapped, I believe. So look, it's turn 3. They play the Knight of the White Orchid before playing a land. They get a plains untapped. They get to put another one into play from their hand now for their land for the turn. And all of a sudden, you didn't even do anything, right? It's turn 3. You're behind 1 mana, but you've ramped. It doesn't even impact. You still get to advance the board. This card is just very, very good. It's just that kind of small value that you just love, So our opponent choosing to just go ahead and play out the Nykthos here. So we know that they have an Arcanist Owl and an Intervention in hand. I think that's all we know about. For our turn, though, we'll get to untap. We'll Fatal Push the Knight of the White Orchid. We get to crack our own clue for what that's worth. But I'd like to deal 3 damage against this Knight of the Ebon Legion going, because we need it to be bigger than this Arcanist Owl once this hits play. So that's our path to victory here. If our opponent ever decides, all right, here we go. So we'll untap. Ooh, a Mutavault is a pretty solid draw, frankly. Not the best thing ever, but pretty decent. So I'm actually going to go ahead and start by cracking the clue, I guess. No reason not to here. And Archangel Avacyn is a pretty good one. We are finding ways to get through the stall here. Now we get an attack. We'll get in for 3. This will trigger the Knight. Now we get to untap. We have a Mutavault and an Archangel. This was a very good turn for us. So we know our opponent's hand is pretty decent, but look, they play Arcanist Owl, I assume. We just get an attack into that, probably get and they're going to chump block now, or they're going to block now, so Thraben Inspector will probably chump block next turn. Look, they're going to get to continue their game plan here and get some value, but I have to say, with the Mutavault providing another body and the Archangel Avacyn in our hand with the mana to cast it, I do feel like we're going to be able to turn the corner here in about, probably 2 turns or so. So we'll see if they do the expected thing here, which is just play a land and a Gideon's Intervention. Nykthos can, if they had 2 White Devotion, they could essentially filter one of the colorless because you could add 2 white and gain 3 white, rather, if they were to add 2 and have 3 total with another knight or something. So this card does get pretty silly, and obviously with the Arcanist Owl in play, it just becomes, it starts to really generate mana. So that said, I don't know that either of these cards are huge right now. Look, just playing the Intervention is pretty reasonable. You take the Knight out of play, but they also need to get somewhere. So yeah, the Arcanist Owl is going to try to get them there by finding them something to get their value going, but we have a very nice attack lined up. My opponent probably just chump blocks or doesn't block at all. We get to block this thing with our Archangel Avacyn on defense, removing their devotion. That's potentially could work out very well for us. Iliad Suncrowned, though, it's a pretty good one. All right, well, the play is to do this. Look, if my opponent blocks with the Arcanist Owl, we pump. That's a good trade for us. So I don't anticipate that happening here. The real question is, if they block with Thraben Inspector, what do we do? Because it is a big tell to pass the turn with 5 mana open like this. So that actually might have been the most interesting line from our opponent, because they would have gained so much information. The downside there, the worst case scenario is, oh, it's a chump block. But the upside there is either we put mana into it and we don't do this, or we do nothing, just let them bounce, and our opponent gains the knowledge that we don't want to tap our mana, and then you can probably deduce Archangel Avacyn if you played Standard during that time. This card was all over the place. So that was, low-key kind of a key moment in this game, depending on what happens from here. Look, my opponent has a combo piece in hand. We could just be dead, for all I know. But if they do sort of the expected thing and attack him with the Arcanist Owl, it could get pretty bad for us. So that said, they don't necessarily need to attack with this. Obviously, with the Gideon's Intervention in hand, they can deal with the Archangel eventually. They keep this as a blocker for these. And it still takes us a little bit to get there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them hold it back. Either way, we'll still flash it in and be able to swing in for 4 before it eats the Intervention. So we also get a little bit of value there. We can't cast spells with a chosen name. I think it's the only Archangel Avacyn in the deck. Might be one more, but I think it's a one of. So they kind of don't get their extra value for paying for their expensive O-Ring. But another way of the Knight of the White Orchid without the value this time. They have the same number of lands as us. It doesn't work, but they do now have 7 devotion. So here comes Heliod, I imagine. Yeah, this gets pretty ugly pretty fast for us. We're going to need a really advantageous combat here with Avacyn. But look, if my opponent were to put both of these on the Owl, the game would just be over. If they even put one of them on the Owl, that's okay, because our creatures will gain indestructible, but 2 on the Owl might be a problem. Yeah, this game's going to be tough. Even if my opponent doesn't have the combo, this is probably the best case scenario for us, is them playing Gideon's Intervention pre-combat. They're going to take the Knight of the Ebon Legion, and they might actually feel emboldened enough at that point to attack with the Arcanist Owl. I mean, look, I don't know if we're ever going to beat this card, but... This is the one that chooses a card name. I see. Sorry. Oh, I was thinking of the other card from that Standard period that was a 4-mana white enchantment that had your opponents can't cast clause in it, but that was the one that exiled permanents. What was that? I don't remember what that one was called, but it doesn't matter. Back to the real world here. We just can't cast Thoughtseize anymore. Not that big of a deal, because we can cast Archangel Avacyn to get our block in. Removing 4 of our opponent's devotion, pretty huge on the one turn where they can't they can't do anything with this mana. So this is going to work out pretty okay for us. And now, kind of despite what happens, we had to poke our opponent for 4 in the air. I don't know what card I was thinking of. All right, doesn't matter. There's a Fatal Push. 1, 2, 3, 4. That Fatal Push is actually a huge draw here. Look, we get a Fatal Push the Knight of the White Orchid. That takes our opponent below 5 Devotion, suddenly freeing up a massive attack for us. This is a giant swing in this game. Look, I'm sure our opponent felt pretty good when they passed the turn with a Heliod up and a giant board when they went to that attack step. And look at the board now. They're down to very little, and we're getting in there. So, look, clearly my opponent with 2 cards in hand and a Heliod in play could just win the game at any moment. They could untap and combo off. They could also maybe make enough use of its abilities to just turn it into a creature again and just win the board state. But as it stands right now, that was huge. We put our opponent down to 5. Get a counter on this. We're putting 4 at him in the air no matter what. So I kind of think they have to combo right now or we're going to take it down. That said, 4 mana is how you get a Walking Ballista for 2. And there it is. So, all right. Well, we had a good run, but look, so what happens is my opponent gets to give it lifelink, and then when it pings a creature, my opponent will gain life, causing them to put a counter on it. So they're just going to ping us to death. Good game. That's too bad. We really had a nice turn swinging that thing around, but unfortunately my opponent did have the combo. So I guess we want this. We don't have a lot of cards for this combo in particular. That is a problem. Huh. Let's see here. None of this is very good. Gotta say, none of this is great. I guess we'll give this a shot. I mean, we have to worry about getting comboed to death here. Just not so sure how many of these cards are going to matter. Our sideboard does not have a lot in the way of beating that, so we'll see here. I mean, that said, we do get a board in a 5th Thoughtseize with the Agonizing Remorse. We get to still have a fair amount of removal with the Anguished Unmaking here, the Fatal Pushes. These cards can all kind of mess them up. So that game did not work out for us, but we'll see if this one will. I mean, not having a Path to Exile in the format to hit that Heliod, which may or may not actually be enough sort of in practice to stop the combo, but the fact that you just know that there's nothing in your deck that can actually remove a Heliod from play, not a great feeling. So, because in that game, right, our opponent didn't have the Ballista at first. It's not a 1-turn combo. We will mulligan this one. And this one looks like a keep. I mean, we'll throw one of these lands on the bottom and hope for the best, but it's got a 1-2-3 curve here with some extra value with a Thraben Inspector to sort of undo the mulligan in the first place. So, heck, I'm in. Go ahead and throw this Godless Shrine on the bottom. We don't have to take any damage this way. Yeah, I mean, this honestly seems like a pretty reasonable hand. Not only is it, nice and defensive with Gideon playing defense if you need to, but oh my gosh, well, now we're just getting somewhere because it's 4 power in play on turn 2. Gideon, by the way, that other mode is to turn it into a 4/4 and attack. So we're playing an indestructible 4/4 on turn 3, and if we hit a land, there's another Gideon to follow. So this is the kind of curve from us that can just get out under our opponent's combo and hopefully put enough pressure on them that they don't have time to set up the Heliod Walking Ballista combo. And this turn, at least there's no Knight of the White Orchid coming down, or if there is, it wouldn't be quite as good, although it would be a pretty decent defender. I guess I'd plus on it and swing and get him for 1. Instead, it is an Anafinza, so I assume this is a combo as well. This card's always a combo card. Thoughtseize, huh? Well, I'm not going to play it this turn. is I want to play Gideon, but next turn I could play it and crack the Clue if we don't draw land or a card we want to play. Okay, so whenever another non-token creature is under the battlefield under your control, bolster 1, where you get to put a 1/1 counter on the creature you control with the least toughness. Okay, I'll just wait and see what they kill us with. I'm not going to think that one through too much. I'm just going to swing with my Scrapheap Scrounger. Heck, maybe they're going to block and I wasted time even reading it. Nope, okay, we get in for 3. Can't cast that. We'll cast Gideon of the Trials plus on this thing since we don't have a blocker for it. I mean, the emblem, not super relevant because our opponent could just ping the Gideon to death before pinging us to death. So the emblem doesn't do much. Here comes the Knight of the White Orchid. But you know what? Turning it into a 4/4 does do something. As does, it's going to be Thoughtseize plus something. It's either Thoughtseize plus Clue, or Spell plus Thoughtseize, or we hit land, probably just play this Gideon and hope that our opponent doesn't combo us to death because this will obviously take over the game if it resolves. So this is all about our opponent's hand right now. Our hand did what we needed to do to win the game, and when there's only so many ways you can interact with your opponent, look, we're holding a lot of them in hand in terms of pressure and Thoughtseizes and so on, but when you can't interact with their combo or their Planeswalker plane or whatever, you just have to look for your own advantages. And what we can do is put a curve on here and get out ahead with Planeswalkers and just try to take over the board. So that's what we can do that our opponent can't. So we can't worry about them comboing us. We just have to execute what our deck can do to the best we can do that. And then if that's good enough, we win. But that's our role in the matchup. So let's go ahead and we did not hit the land. So we'll go ahead and start things off with the Thoughtseize. Wow. Okay. So there's some cards right here. Daxos. It's a lot of devotion. Double Stasis Snare. But it only hits creatures. So this is for our scrap heaps. But once we remove their ability to cast the Arcanist Owl, game gets a lot tougher for him here. So, yeah, this is a real bad attacker right now. The actual bolstering the fairway is making our opponent have an impressive board. I don't really want to play a second Scrounger. Kind of want to plus the Gideon on the Anaphinza so that, we still don't lose Gideon that way? Okay. I guess this is the best line for us. And I say we don't lose Gideon that way. I mean, Bolster Trigger might get us anyways. What do they have in their hand here? Removal, Daxos. I think we might just lose to the fair version, but that's actually really neat. I mean, this deck, this mono white devotion deck, reminds me of all things of an Abzan deck, but the Abzan combo deck that used a lot of these same cards, Anaphinza, the equivalent there being Kitchen Finks and Viscerous here and so on. But what I loved about that time period in Modern when it first kind of came out, kind of the pod plan when pod was legal, but really the deck after that, is it had this combo plan, but so often it would just win by playing fair things. It would just play Kitchen Finks and a Bird's Paradise quickly, and then use Gavany Township to put +1/+1 counters on them. And that was the deck. That's what it did, and it would win that way. But sometimes it would also combo you to death, and that's what this mono white deck reminds me of. Last game they killed us with a combo when we had the board under control. Now here we are in this game. They're not comboing us, but we're not winning either. They're ahead on board. Now, the closest we can get to changing that is probably this Gideon, so we need to find a land off of this Clue here, but our opponent with double Stasis Snare in hand and the ability to make all the white mana they need, I mean, this is going to make 7 white mana. I don't think the creatures are going to matter. I think we're just dead. Note that this does say a Gideon Planeswalker, so this Gideon Planeswalker would count. But I honestly don't think we're gonna win. Our opponent is just basically storming off through their deck right now with these counters, buffing up the team. They even have the mana left over to use the Clue from the Thraben Inspector and then cast another spell, which is what it looks like they're going to try to do. I mean, we're just too far behind on board. Even Gideon Ally Zendikar not going to do it, and I misclicked through this Clue there anyways, but that's because we're dead. I mean, playing Gideon here doesn't matter. They untap, they remove both of our creatures, they attack our Gideon to death, and then what are we going to do? This game is over. Wow, nice match, Mono White Devotion. I've not actually played against the deck before, but I am a fan after that match. Well, that is not as well as I wanted to do with this Knights deck. Maybe we'll play one more, right? let's jam one more game, see if we can pick up a win here with the Knights deck. All right, rounding things out here with Black-White Knights. Look, we're on the draw. I want to keep this hand. It's essentially 3 cards if you count the Mutavault, but I'm going to mulligan this one. Make the right decision here. This hand is much better. Much better. I get to throw away the that. We have 3 lands now. We have a 1, a 3, and a 4. This hand looks pretty good to me, although see what my opponent's up to. Arboreal Grazerine on turn 1 into a Sheltered Thicket. Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and shock this thing in. I guess just play the Thraben Inspector. I don't necessarily see a world in which I want to crack the clue next turn, but it's not like playing the Knight of the Adder Legion does anything either, so I may as well give myself the option to. Because who knows? Maybe my opponent plays like an 0-5 or something, and then this doesn't matter either, and I just want to crack the clue. So that said, instead, it is the worst. It is Sylvan Scrying into Lotus Field, huh? Not what you want to see on turn 2 when you have exactly 1 Thraben Inspector in play. So that is what it is. I don't even know what we're supposed to do at this point. I guess just pass the turn. See if our opponent whiffs here as they, assuredly try to combo off one way or another. Yep. The thing is, they might not have it yet, and they may still need a few turns, but we have absolutely no pressure on them, no Thoughtseize, nothing we can do, and that's unfortunate, and that's kind of the issue you can see that we're running into with this Black-White Knights deck. I mean, I basically haven't lost a... I mean, I guess we did lose a game to the Mono-White deck where we kind of just lost on board, but for the most part, it's our opponents doing things we can't interact with that's been a problem. Pound for pound, our creatures have been better in most of the games we've played, but that doesn't always translate to victory. And as powerful as cards like History of Benalia and Gideon Ally of Zendikar is, Pioneer, it's not as powerful as Modern, but it is not standard either. These cards they can be pretty slow. So against the right decks, they're incredible. If our opponent's about to combo us to death here with Underworld Breach, it really doesn't much matter that we're going to have this really resilient 12 power plus in play or whatever on turn 4. So my opponent might just be going for it here, so we'll see. Now, the good news is we do actually have plenty of sideboard for this deck, so we'll see what we can do, but I think that'll do it. I mean, Hidden Strings plus Underworld Breach, that allows them to get through their entire deck, milling, escaping, etc., until there's nothing left, at which point they cast Thassa's Oracle and win the game. So, all right. Like I said, though, plenty of sideboard here. We get the Rest in Peace, we just get everything, right? So I'm going to cut everything that is slow. This doesn't seem like it. The land's already going to come into play tapped. We're just going to make our deck as fast as possible while retaining removal here. So, I'm sorry, while retaining interaction. We don't want removal. Now, this finds Knights. We are looking for Knights. There's nothing that's hugely particular, though. But you know what? Let's just bring these in and let's keep the beatdown on, right? Let's just get in there. We'll have plenty of creatures and hopefully have block permanents ourselves to go ahead and turn that on. And you know what? I'm in. And this hand, incidentally, actually doesn't have a black card right now, but it's got this pretty swamp. It's got a Thraben Inspector. It's got a Damping Sphere. It's got a pretty nice curve all on its own here. I mean, Thraben Inspector and a Knight of Grace, I mean, that's a clock. It's 3 damage. It does something. And then, of course, we have the Damping Sphere to mess, try to, from that point on, to mess with their Lotus Breach. So, I'm sorry, Lotus Field in this case. It's a Blast Zone on Thraben Inspector, huh? Well, don't think that changes anything for me. Take some damage. Play Knight of Grace and attack. So next turn, Thraben Inspector is not a bad pickup there. If we go for the Damping Sphere, we can also play Thraben Inspector. Although we'll probably do it in the other order. This is great though, because here comes my opponent in with the Lotus Field. I think I want to let them play it next turn, actually, so... Lotus Field, they don't have to be untapped, right? Just 2 lands. Alright, here's what I give them to do. I'm actually just going to crack the clue here, because I don't want to show them that we have this before they play it, because it might change the way they play the game. But also, the thing is, we need to find more cards ourselves. So cracking the clue here is fine. We don't need the Damping Sphere in play until they're actually trying to make mana with the Lotus Field, which I don't think will be this turn. I think they're just probably going to play it here and ship the turn back, which is the perfect time for us to then play out the Damping Sphere. And we get to attack with the Mutavault that way. Or we could draw a Thoughtseize, which is pretty good in itself. So, all right, options here. I want to make sure I do these in the correct order. I either get to Thoughtseize or I get to attack with Mutavault. And since that doesn't change the clock, we will just be Thoughtseizing here. And see what our opponent's working with. Oh my gosh, okay. Well, here's the thing. None of these cards beat Damping Sphere. They don't beat Damping Sphere at all, as a matter of fact. I guess I take the... I mean, the Hour of Devastation is obviously the scariest card here, but look, they can't cast this card, right? Unless they find an answer to the Damping Sphere. So if they find an answer to the Damping Sphere, we're just dead to this. So taking the Hour of Devastation doesn't make sense because they're never going to have 5 mana and cast it in this game. They're going to kill our Damping Sphere and then kill us before any of that happens. By the same token, this does really mess with us. So, you know, you could argue that if they find an answer to Damping Sphere, they win no matter what. I think I'm just going to take the Underworld Breach here. This hand just doesn't do anything. So they have nothing going on against Damping Sphere. So let's just attack. Get in for 4 here. Next turn we can play Scrounger plus attack with Mutavault. So we're 2 turns away, but I mean our opponent double strip mine themselves with Damping Sphere in play. So this works out. They have 2 mana. There's not a lot they're going to be doing. All right, we get a swing in for, what is this, 6? Conveniently enough to kill them next turn, even if they do have 1 removal spell anyways. All right, run out our Scrapheap Scrounger and pass the turn back. I mean, look, either our opponent top-decked an answer to Damping Sphere, or they didn't. And we're going to find out right now because we've got the game if they didn't. But they did. How disgusting is that? They did top deck an answer to it. And there's a Thespian stage. How brutal. Wow, how absolutely killer. Now my opponent has the hidden strings. They have access to 6 mana now. I mean, this was the line that led me to taking the Underworld Breach because I guess there is maybe some world where we beat Hour of Devastation, you know, by bringing back Scrapheap Scrounger or something. But there is no world in which we beat them actually just casting Underworld Breach. So, look, we took the line that gives us a chance against the worst-case scenario, which is them top-decking the Return to Nature there. So, we'll see if they get there with strategic planning. I mean, the bottom line is they still have to go off this turn. I mean, they're in the market for exactly that. So now we get to get in there with the Mutavault. That's 2. This is 3 when it comes back. So, I mean, the truth is our opponent had to do that, and now they need to untap and win. I mean, they're not out of the woods yet is the thing. So I'll go ahead and shock this in. It's not going to matter. That way I can crack my clue as well as get back the Scrounger here. But it's all about my opponent trying to kill us. You know, they've seen a lot of cards now, but strategic planning means they don't have Underworld Breach in hand quite yet. Do they have nor is there a Chronic Flooding in here, right? So look, they may actually still be a little bit of ways away. I mean, obviously, Pour Over the Pages gets you there pretty quick. It nets a mana with double Lotus Field tapping for it. And, you know, obviously drawing 3 cards is pretty good. So we'll see what they're doing here. They're not there yet, though. Sylvan Scrying, Radiant Fountain, maybe? so that they don't die. Temple of Mystery? Well, these are all cards that make me think we might have a shot. Although, all right, Satyr Wayfinder doesn't beat us, actually. I think we're going to get there if they don't do anything else with this mana because... Oh, but there it is. There it is. Okay, well, that was frankly a tragedy because we had it otherwise. I mean, I guess technically they're still not there, but that was pretty bad for us. I mean, we'll get back our Scrounger here. Very nice series of draws from them. The problem is, I guess Fatal Pushes are out here, which isn't in our deck. Although, you know what? Rest in Peace is pretty good, too. So is another Damping Sphere off the top. Well, okay. I guess I spoke too soon. No reason to even activate the Mutavault here. They get a free block with this. They're going to have to throw away a creature here no matter what. But, wow, top decking those two cards in particular, pretty good here. So, our Scrounger's in play. We'll rest in peace right now. This removes the threat of... Okay. That removes the threat of a Lotus, an Underworld Bridge killing us. And this messes with their mana. All of a sudden, they have 5 mana instead of whatever the 11 they were expecting. And we have lethal next turn because of the old Anguished Unmaking on Arboreal Grazer. This was actually a pretty sweet game all around, gotta say. All right, Thraben Inspector. Not needed. Anguished Unmaking on the Arboreal Grazer. That makes the Scrapheap Scrounger lethal. We even get to play this. Well, actually, we wouldn't have because of the tax. But that doesn't matter. We got there. We took it down. We made it to a Game 3, everybody. I don't know if we're going to beat them in Game 3, but we made it to Game 3, and I'll take that. That was honestly actually a really sweet game because that one swung back and forth several times. That was one I'd like to commentate. If that's the kind of match that it's like, well, I kind of almost wish that, I haven't had a tournament because that was just a wild back and forth. It's actually really neat. Anyways, onward to this hand. On the draw, I'm in. Look, it's a little risky, but this hand is incredible if we find a land. In terms of early pressure, I mean, 3 power is the most power we can put into play. And it's a pretty important threshold against our Arboreal Grazer. So we're going to do what we can here. And there we go. We got there with that. So I'm actually going to just Thoughtseize my opponent immediately here. See what they've got going on. Here's the Lotus Field. We'll pour over the pages and a Fae of Wishes, huh? These are all pretty bad for me. I think I take the Fae of Wishes. That's the one they get to cast the soonest. And it's, the most dangerous. So we'll pass the turn back here. The reason I did that is, one, I don't, if they have a 3 mana play that's very good, I don't want them to make it. But the Knight of the Ebon Legion does nothing. All that really matters are the Scrapheap Scroungers right now anyways. But on turn 3, we're going to get to be, never mind. I was going to say, we're going to get to be the ones who live the dream with Knight of the White Orchid. But I guess the secret mode of Lotus Field is that it actually counters the Knight of the White Orchid value. That said, if we don't draw lands, they may just naturally walk themselves back up to 3 anyways. So, all right, we've done what we can. We Thoughtseize. Let's play a Scrounger and hope that they miss. Hope that they just draw cards like this and not cards like Underworld Breach or Fae of Wishes. You can see taking Fae of Wishes, I think, pretty clearly turned out to be the right choice. Rest in Peace, pretty decent. I think the question is, can I get away with not playing it this turn? Do we think we're just dead? They're going to untap, have 5 mana, pour over the pages, untap. That's when they find it and get there. Yeah, I guess we probably just have to play this. So it's fine. I mean, we slightly slow down our clock. But, I mean, hey, it's very possible that my opponent just can't beat Rest in Peace, right? If they don't find an answer to it. So, we're definitely going to make them have it all. And pour over the pages certainly helps them find it. But look, even if that happens, we did nuke the graveyard, which includes a Pour Over the Pages, a Hidden Strings, and a Fae of Wishes. Those are relevant cards. There's a Ratchet Bomb. So that is, in fact, a slow answer here to the Rest in Peace. Or it could be an answer to the Night Tokens if I hit land and play this History of Benalia. Instead, they blew it up for... I think they might have misclicked that one. He said whoops in chat. Okay, well. They were going for the main phase counter. Did not work out for them. And now I get to play a History of Benalia. So, I mean, here's the silver lining for them. Yes, it would have dealt with the Rest in Peace, a turn from now, right? But it means they would have had one counter on it when I played a History. They would have never been able to hit the Knights. All right, Pour Over the Pages number 2 here. So they're not getting value. This card gives so much value to this deck because they get to play the cards in their graveyard. But in this case, they're not getting value from that aspect of the card. But actually, here is a Ratchet Bomb. Counter put on properly this time. This is definitely coming at Rest in Peace. Unfortunately, it's also going to hit my Scrapheap Scroungers. Well, hey, look, we're going to get Knight of the White Orchid value, actually. Although yeah, I mean, I guess that's just what I'm going to do. If that's... Let's see here. I can play the Knight of the White Orchid, go get a Plains, put it into play tapped, activate the Mutavault, attack. Well, actually, this only goes to 2 next turn. This actually works out perfectly fine for us. Play the Knight of the White Orchid. Play the other Scrapheap Scrounger. That's what we're going to do. Because my opponent actually doesn't get... They don't get to crack this until the turn after. So we get to get in for some damage here. Then next turn, in my upkeep or whatever, I can turn Mutavault into a Knight. That'll give it the plus from this ability. And I think we get a swing at lethal at my opponent. So they'd figure out how to beat Rest in Peace right now. Granted, is probably a good way to do it. That said, what are they looking for? An Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Hidden Strings? I don't think they're getting to an Ugin this turn. I mean, maybe they'll prove me wrong, but I think we might have this. Okay, Hidden Strings on the Ratchet Bomb, so you can blow up all the 2s. Okay, I'm on board. Powerful play. Is it good enough? Probably. I think we get in for 8. Huh. Okay. Strong play. And apparently they do get exiled. And the blocker as well. So, okay. So they have an Ugin in hand, which costs 8, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Alright, well, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So actually, I have enough mana to do everything, so I can get my attack in with this Mutavault here. I don't think we're going to have enough. My opponent probably has a land and an Ugin, and I don't think there's any way we can beat an Ugin. Although, Mutavault could, in theory, poke my opponent down. But I definitely need a stop here on stop on my turn. All right, we'll activate the Mutavault. Wow, we drew a Kunoros, huh? That changes my play, I think. All right, so we force our opponent to make some chump blocks here, and we get some damage in, which could be relevant. Put him down to 8. So it's all about the land, right? They can't combo through Kunoros, but they could Ugin Kunoros. So what are we more worried about? I mean, I think I'm more worried about the Ugin, but I don't really have any good lines against it here. I guess we play the Kunoros because it protects against one line, then comboing. And if they do have Ugin, I mean, I guess we get to play out 2 creatures afterwards. I don't really see that mattering, as they had a Blast Zone. Unfortunately, that does mean Ugin is hitting the board here. And they only have to -3 it, so leaves it with 4 counters. Our Mutavault won't be able to take it down. All right, let's see what we can do here. A Godless Shrine, you say. So, does 3 damage to any target. All right, that doesn't kill us. They can -2 to get rid of these. So, here are the options. I can attack them down to 6 with Mutavault, play these, which in theory would mean maybe we could kill them even after they plus to kill it. On the other hand, what I could do is poke Ugin down to 2, then play both of them. Then I could, in theory, actually beat it plussing if they have nothing else. And then they have to -2, it down to 0 to wipe the board of these, leaving us with just a Mutavault. I mean, I think that's our only line that leads to any probability of winning. I think we're probably pretty dead no matter what we do, but hey, we're going to play to our outs, and this is what we got. You know, Ugin plussing here goes to 4. Yeah, I mean, look, we get to kill it if... I guess the Blast Zone untapping gets us. I say, even if the last card in their hand is land, unfortunately, it actually looks like the Blast Zone, of all things, is going to be the difference maker here as it takes out our Knight of the Ebon Legion. I don't... Yeah, I mean, I guess that was on board, but there's really nothing to it, especially with us drawing a land here. So, unfortunately, we just could not take any more down with Black-White Knights. But you know what? All of these matches were very close. And you can certainly see how just a card or two differently, things could have gone in our favor. So, look, even in this, which I'd consider to be a fairly bad matchup, we took our opponent to 3 games, and look, this one was incredibly close. In fact, if our opponent, if that land was anything but a Blast Zone, look, we actually would have beat a resolved Ugin in this game, or at least had a chance to. So, unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, but you know what? This deck was pretty sweet. Everybody, thank you so much for watching Punting Pioneer. Every Thursday, I have videos here, either Pioneer or my Mining Modern series. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.